You know, when you hear that music, big things they're not brewing. They are fully brewed. And UFC CEO Dana White, it's not often that he says he's going to do something, and then when he actually does it, he comes through in a big way. But boy, did he come through in a big way tonight. UFC 314 is coming together. We have a main event, and there's a lot going on with that. UFC 315 as a main event. There's a lot going on with that. We have fight announcements. We have main event shifting in all sorts of different directions. And the big news, as you can see on the top, we're going to have a brand new featherweight champion at UFC 314, because the first thing Dana White announced during his Instagram live is that Ilia Topuria, the featherweight champ who knocked out Alexander Volkanovski a year ago at UFC 298, and then went on to become the first fighter to stop Max Holloway via strikes in his first title defense at UFC 308 back in October. The man is dead serious about going up to lightweight. He is no longer the featherweight champion. He is vacating the title. And the main event for UFC 314 is former featherweight champion Alexander Volkanovski facing the surging Diego Lopez, who enters this fight on a 5-fight win streak, including a lopsided win over Brian Ortega at UFC 306 in September. That is your main event for the vacant featherweight championship. We also found out on that card, the 5-round co-main event will be Michael Chandler versus Paddy Pimblett. Also, Patricio Pitbull is officially a member of the UFC roster. He will face Yair Rodriguez on that card, and there's some other fights that were announced on that as well. On top of that, UFC 315, we have 2 title fights. The main event, Belal Muhammad will put his welterweight championship on the line for the first time, and it will not be against Shavkat Rakhmonov, the number 1 contender. It will be against Jack Della, Maddalena, who was supposed to face Leon Edwards in the main event of UFC London on March 22nd. And now you think to yourself, who's Leon Edwards going to fight? Leon Edwards is now fighting Sean Brady. Jack Della Maddalena is now going to challenge Belal Muhammad for the welterweight title. And in the co-main event, Valentina Shevchenko will put her newly regained flyweight title on the line. No, she's not fighting Zhang Weili in a champ versus champ fight. UFC doing the right thing. Manon Fiorot is going to get her day in court. She will challenge Valentina Shevchenko for that championship in the co-main event of UFC 315, which goes down in May in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. So we got 2 big title fights, and Canada has been kind of gotten the big fat hose job the last 2 pay-per-views. This one's shaping up to be pretty darn good. But thank you for joining us. I hope I was laid out as much of this news as I possibly could. And I can't do this by myself. So joining me, I am Mike Heck, if I didn't say who I was earlier. My friend Damon Martin is here. Fighter versus writer. This is just so much shit, Damon. I don't even know what to say. I expected, hey, maybe we'll get a main event. Maybe we'll get 1 fight. I didn't expect all of this. What was your reaction to all of this?
I definitely didn't see all this coming. I mean, a couple of things, sure, but Ilia vacating the title, new featherweight champion, Paddy Pimblett getting Michael Chandler. Now, that one we kind of heard rumors about, but still, the reality of it is still kind of shocking. Patricio Pitbull officially signing with the UFC, a Bellator legend, maybe the Bellator GOAT, now fighting in the UFC and getting Yair Rodriguez. Shavkat Rakhmonov not getting the title fight because he's injured. I mean, good Lord, I feel like the breaking news music wasn't enough. It almost feels like we needed like the Stone Cold Steve Austin glass break at the beginning of the show, because I did not see all. Like, it was just like so much coming at you at one time.
And it was so nonchalant the way that he announced it. It was just, he's doing the IG live thing. It's not your typical pre-recorded video with B-roll in the background and yelling and screaming. It was such a roller coaster ride of emotions with Dana, just very calmly. And then it was like, and then the main event. And it was just all over the place. By the way, in case you guys missed it, there were other fights announced for UFC 314 as well. Jeff Neal versus Carlos Praches is official, and Dan Ige versus Sean Woodson also for UFC 314. That card is coming along nicely, but Ilia Topuria vacating the featherweight title, Damon. He was a champion for like a year, and then he's just like, nah, I've accomplished everything I needed to accomplish here. I'm going up to lightweight. I will say this, Damon. I give this man all the credit in the world, because as you probably know, and as most of our viewers know, you know how I feel about champ versus champ fights and champions who haven't cleaned out their divisions, calling for title fights in other divisions, because I always feel like there's not a huge risk involved because you could just be like, yeah, I'm going to do this, but then I could just go back down and defend my other belt. Ilia Topuria doing it the way that it should be done. If you're going to take this risk, if you're going to make the move up to lightweight or move it down or however you want to do it, and then you vacate the belt, that's a man doing it correctly. So are you surprised, Damon, that Ilia has vacated the belt? We don't know what he's doing. We know he's going to make a quest towards the lightweight belt. Dana didn't announce exactly what's going on for Ilia Topuria, but it is kind of refreshing, is it not, that a champion is going to make the move and challenge himself, but he is vacating his other belt in order to do so.
So let me just say first off, I never loved the move for Ilia to go to 155 because I do think he's going to be undersized. You remember the fight he had up there a couple years ago. It was a little rough going. Now again, he's obviously gotten better since then, and you know Jai Herbert is a gigantic guy for a lightweight division, but it was a little scary because he got some hammers dropped on him in that fight, turned it around and won. But Jai Herbert, no offense, Jai Herbert is not a top 15 lightweight in the world. So I never loved the move, but I also understand he has a really rough weight cut and he wants to challenge himself. So good for him. But the key here, what you said is exactly right. He vacated the belt. Didn't see that coming. The fact that he's doing that tells me he's deadly serious about going to lightweight. Also, I think you got to pay very close attention to the fact that Dana White said during that live stream, we're working on what's next for Ilia, but we don't have it done yet. And I say that I'm just speculating here. I'm not saying I have a lot of inside info on this. But the fact that they didn't just immediately announce him versus Islam Makhachev for the title makes me think that he's not going to just slide right into a title fight. They're going to make him earn it. So maybe we're going to get, somebody on Twitter already suggested, Ilia versus Arman Tsarukyan. What a tremendous fight that would be.
Oh my God.
And I mean, if you think about it, because listen, Islam's got a point. You know, he already beat Volkanovski twice. He's like, I don't want to keep beating up these smaller guys. It's not doing anything for my legacy. He's not wrong. You know, like he doesn't get as much credit. If Alex or Ilia comes up and beats him, they get all the credit in the world. We don't remember that Jan Blachowicz beat Israel Adesanya. Like he just beat a quote unquote smaller guy. So I understand Islam not really being interested in that. But if Ilia goes out and beats Arman Tsarukyan, there's no doubt he deserves it. So I wouldn't jump into like it's immediately going to be a title fight. Maybe it will be. I don't know. But the fact that he's vacating the belt, you're 100% right. He's doing the right thing. He's not holding up the division. And also, he's risking the biscuit because he's not going up there saying, I can always fall back and defend my featherweight title. He's not playing that game. I appreciate that.
I'll tell you what, man. If Ilia Topuria is going to 55, he vacates the title, all of this money that he now earns as being champion, and he's becoming a big, big star, to fight Arman Tsarukyan to earn a title fight, and then beats Arman and then goes up and fights Islam. Like, that would be ridiculous. I can't remember somebody just vacating a belt and being like, I'm so bored, I'm just going to move up to 55. I'm going to fight the most dangerous guy in this division before fighting the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world. So let me ask you, Damon, what are the chances that Ilia Topuria vacates, but then his next fight is at 55, but it's not against Islam Makhachev? In your opinion, do you feel like he's not going to get a title fight and that he's going to have to risk it for the biscuit, as you said, and fight a Tsarukyan or maybe fight a Dustin Poirier first? Or do you think the UFC, because it's a contract year, the TV deal, yada, 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 they're just going to put the biggest fight they could possibly put together here?
Right now, if you're forcing me to say, I would lean towards a non-title fight because Islam has been so strong about that. And listen, something Henry Cejudo said to me when I talked to him about a week ago, he said, when you're a champion, like it or not, you do have a little bit more leeway in terms of picking and choosing your fights. The UFC listens to you a little bit more. Now, maybe not every champion, but you know, the marquee stars. Islam is that. He's the number one pound for pound guy in the world. And we know, I mean, Dana put the quote up in the UFC gym, you know, champion, whatever that quote is about, you know, he's, you know, champions defend, just give me a name, whatever it was. I think Islam's got enough goodwill built up in the UFC. If he says, I don't want to fight this guy on his first day at lightweight, they'll respect that. And you know, Islam did just fight in January. He usually fights twice a year. He's got Ramadan coming up in March, and that's the entire month. And typically speaking, if you remember Khabib and a lot of the other great fighters from that part of the world, they typically didn't turn around. I know Islam did fight in June last year, but he fought in January. I think it's probably more realistic for him to fight maybe October when they go back to Abu Dhabi. That's always a big headline spot for him. In the meantime, I mean, who's going to complain about Ilia Topuria and Arman Tsarukyan if that's what we get? Good God, what an amazing fight that would be. So I'm leaning to non-title fight only because Islam's already fought once this year. He's got Ramadan in March, and you think about the end of the year, Saudi Arabia, Abu Dhabi, those are massive landing spots for Islam. So I'm leaning non-title fights.
It's going to be wild to see how this all plays out, and we'll see what Dana has to say about that. But Alexander Volkanovski, first fight back since losing to Ilia Topuria, getting brutally knocked out, suffered back-to-back brutal knockout losses to Islam Makhachev in the short notice rematch. Then he loses the belt to Ilia Topuria. We haven't seen him since, and I think absence makes the heart grow fonder, not only for the fans, but just for him too. I feel like he's getting over and over, but now he's fighting one of the most popular guys in the sport. This dude is just rising up the ranks in so many different ways in Diego Lopez. And then we find out Patricio Pitbull's fighting Yair Rodriguez. Damon, first of all, your reaction to Volkanovski versus Lopez being official. And the other thing I will say, agree or disagree, the biggest loser in all of these announcements, Movsar Evloev.
So two things. One, and I'm glad you brought up Movsar because somebody just asked me that. Somebody on Twitter responded to my tweet about it and said Movsar has just left the chat. It's a funny comment, but the reality is Movsar has Ramadan in March. He wasn't going to fight in April anyways, so he wasn't a viable candidate to get either of those fights. So before everyone just jumps on and says Movsar is getting screwed, Movsar wouldn't fight in April. He wanted to fight earlier than that. When I spoke to him after his last fight with Aljamain Sterling, he said he'd like to fight in January, February, but March is the beginning. The entire month of March is Ramadan. Coming back and fighting, is it April 10th or April 12th? That's the different date for UFC 314. That would just be too early. He just wouldn't have it. Yeah. So so before everyone jumps on and says, man, Movsar's getting screwed. I don't think Movsar was available, first off. I think it's unfortunate, but I don't think he was available. Am I wrong? I think it's kind of weird for me to say this, but if Ilia hadn't vacated and this was just an interim title, I'd be kind of so-so on the whole Alexander Volkanovski, Diego Lopez thing. But the fact that he vacated, I'm actually kind of weirdly more excited for this matchup because I don't know that I loved Alex going back in there and fighting just an absolute murderer in Ilia Topuria again. But now we get a fresh matchup, and you get a young, hungry guy like Diego Lopez in there. If Diego goes out there and wipes out Alexander Volkanovski, which absolutely could happen, you get a whole new start to the division. And then on the flip side of that, Alex can go out there and beat a young gun like Diego Lopez. We kind of like, okay, well, maybe he really is the GOAT. So I actually weirdly like this better because I didn't love him fighting Ilia again. So I kind of actually like this better.
And what's also kind of weird about this is not long after Max Holloway made his commitment to lightweight, here comes the boogeyman, the guy who just knocked him out. He's moving up as well. So he's just cutting the line and getting in front of him. But it doesn't really affect Max because he could maybe fight a Dustin Poirier. We could do that sort of 4-man BMF lightweight tournament that people are kind of throwing out. We could still get everything we want. And then Ilia moving up to 155. God, this Ilia versus Arman Tsarukyan idea just scratches me right where I itch, Damon. I can't lie to you. That would be absolutely compelling. UFC 314 is just getting completely compelling. Paddy Pimblett getting Michael Chandler, 5-round co-main event here. Obviously, a lot to gain here for Paddy Pimblett. This is a very big deal for him. Getting a big spot, getting a huge name in Michael Chandler. Conor McGregor was supposed to get Michael Chandler, and now Paddy swoops right in there and gets this opportunity. What are the stakes for both guys? Because a win for Paddy puts him, in a really interesting spot. But if Michael Chandler goes out there and beats Paddy Pimblett, what does he gain from this?
I think Michael Chandler is kind of in fun fight territory right now. What I mean by that is I don't think anyone was going to see Chandler getting back into title contention maybe ever again. I think that the Charles Oliveira rematch that really didn't make it didn't make a ton of sense when it happened, but it happened and it wasn't a particularly close fight. I think that was kind of like his last run at getting it to, let's not forget, Michael Chandler's not a young guy. He's 37, 38. This is fun fight territory for Chandler. And again, let's not forget, he already fought Gaethje already fought Poirier. He had a lot of fun fights already. So now I think he's looking at the Paddy Pimbletts, the Renato Moicanos, the guys who can have these really fun fights and still go out there and be entertaining. So I weirdly love it for Chandler. It's something new, something different. I mean, don't get me wrong, and I don't want to sound like I'm knocking the guy, but I don't know that we would have gotten just uber excited to see Chandler versus Mateusz Gamrot. Like, would it be a good fight? Could it be a fun fight? Sure, but there's something just so different and interesting about throwing Paddy Pimblett in there. And for Paddy, I mean, this is a chance for him to take his superstardom and rock it to the next level because he's already a star. If he can go out there and beat Michael Chandler, who is, like it or not, a star, huge for him. It puts him right in the thick of things. It puts him in to where maybe he gets the winner of Gaethje and Hooker, or maybe he does, depending on timing, maybe he gets Dustin Poirier, or maybe he gets, Ilia Topuria, that fight that they've talked about forever. There's all kinds of possibilities for Paddy, but there's also a real possibility he goes out there and gets sparked in the first 30 seconds by a very angry Michael Chandler. So this is a really, I actually weirdly love this matchup as odd as it is.
Yeah, I love every fight they have on here. It's sick. It's just
Patricio
a really,
Pitbull.
really strong card.
Patricio Pitbull and Michael Chandler are sharing the same card in 2025 in the UFC.
This is unbelievable. It's always these Miami cards that just get super weird, and we get all these different names and all that, and then that's going to end, and then UFC 315 comes along, and we get Belal Muhammad versus Jack Della Maddalena, not Shavkat Rakhmonov. Dana mentioned the injury. Shavkat tweeted out about a half an hour ago as we speak, quote, "Big thanks to the UFC for offering me the shot at the belt first. Unfortunately, due to injury, I won't be ready for May. I'll be facing the winner later this year." So tough spot for Shavkat. This is a division where there's a lot of talent coming up. Carlos Prates, a guy we mentioned. Michael Morales is fighting Gilbert Burns on this card. So absence could be tough for at 170, but you kind of have to feel like Shavkat will get the winner. But JDM, Jack Della Maddalena, first fight since the Gilbert Burns win. He's dealt with a litany of injuries, and now he returns. It'll be 13 months after the Burns fight, and he's fighting for the title. Your thoughts on this matchup? Were you surprised that this was the announcement?
I mean, I'm a little surprised only because obviously I don't think anyone knew about Shavkat being injured. I think that's first and foremost. But I like that the UFC just said, hey, who's the next guy in line? And it is legitimately should be Jack Della Maddalena. I mean, if he had beaten Leon Edwards, he would have been there anyways. And again, you could say, well, he beat Gilbert Burns. Gilbert's not the same guy he was, but he's on a 7-fight win streak, a lot of finishes. Again, I appreciate just next man up. I mean, there really isn't another number one contender. I mean, you could even argue they could have thrown in Ian Machado Gary, and I don't think people would have totally freaked out considering how he did against Shavkat. But I don't mind this. And it's funny. I think the narrative for this fight is going to shift dramatically because when Belal was fighting Shavkat, everyone's like, well, Shavkat's the new champ. Let's just go ahead and shine up the belt and get him ready to be crowned. I think the narrative is going to shift in this where Belal should be a pretty heavy favorite to win here. I think Jack's tremendous, but we've seen Jack struggle with wrestling in the UFC a couple times. And Gilbert Burns kind of ran out of gas and then got caught in that third round. One thing we know for sure, Belal Muhammad does not run out of gas. So it's an uphill battle for Jack. I'm not going to lie. But I'm glad they just said, hey, next man up. And Jack legitimately is the next man up.
Yeah, it's an interesting fight. The Gilbert Burns fight gives you a little bit of cause for pause because he was losing that fight up until he wasn't. It was just one of those crazy situations. He was less than a minute away from losing that fight. And then he comes out of nowhere, hurts Gilbert, gets him out of there, and now he fights for a belt. And what a story it would be after that long layoff and all the injuries. He goes in there and wins the belts in his first opportunity, and Belal Muhammad gets his opportunity. He's going to headline in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, hosting this fight of all places. But hey, you got to get title fights on the books, and there you have it. But the good news for Manon Fiorot, it was a little scary for her, especially after Zhang Weili beating Tatiana Suarez the way that she did it. She wanted the fight against Valentina Shevchenko. Dana White seemed enthused and interested in that, and we were all concerned, what's going to happen with Manon Fiorot? Is she going to get her shot? Is she going to get overlooked? Are the UFC going to skip over her in order to make this super fight? The answer is no. She is getting her opportunity to fight Valentina Shevchenko, and as much as I want to see Zhang Weili try to make history, Damon Martin, I feel like we have to do this fight first. Am I correct in saying that?
I mean, listen, based on meritocracy, you're not wrong. I mean, Manon Fiore has earned it. She beat Erin Blanchfield. She beat Rose Namajunas. She's undefeated in the UFC. She absolutely has deserved it. But you know my old phrase about deserves. Never just strike that word from your vocabulary if you're an MMA fan. I think I had the entire country of France coming from my throat after UFC 311 when I said I wanted to see Zhang Weili versus Valentina Shevchenko. I tweeted, I said, I'm sorry, Manon Fiore, but I want to see Zhang Weili against Valentina Shevchenko. And I do. But I think this is just, I say it all the time. It's always a matter of timing. UFC, they want to stack a pay-per-view. Listen, don't get me wrong. I think, the right fight, you do Belal and Shavkat. That's actually a really interesting fight. I think you could headline that and just have a pretty good co-main event. But Jack's not a huge name, and I think Belal is going to be a pretty heavy favorite. So they got to put another title fight on here. Who's available? What works out timing-wise? Well, Valentina Shevchenko and Zhang Weili just fought, so you put in Manon Fiore. So you kind of get what you want. But if the UFC had their, druthers, I think we'd probably be seeing Zhang Weili against Valentina Shevchenko. But again, meritocracy works out this time, and Manon's getting her shot.
All right, let's play a fun game. I have not seen betting lines for Valentina Shevchenko versus Manon Fiore yet, but let's play a fun little game, Damon. Let's play Guess Who's the Favorite.
All right.
Let's start with Michael Chandler versus Paddy Pimblett. Who is the favorite?
Michael Chandler should be the favorite, I would hope.
He is a slight favorite, minus 125 in the opening odds. Paddy Pimblett plus 105, basically a coin flip. Alexander Volkanovski.
A little closer than I thought. I thought it'd be a little further apart. Okay.
Alexander Volkanovski versus Diego Lopez. Who's the favorite?
I'm going to say Volk for respect, but I won't be shocked at all if Lopez ends up being the favorite by fight time.
Eerily similar to the Chandler Pimblett line. Volk minus 130, Lopez plus 110. Very, very close. Belal Muhammad's going to be the favorite. How big of a favorite do you think he is against Jack Della Maddalena right now in the opening odds?
If I was guessing, I would say minus 250 to minus 300. 2 to 1, 3 to 1 odds would be my guess.
A little more respect. Minus 205 for Belal. The comeback on JDM plus 170. Some other interesting lines. Michael Morales, a minus 395 favorite against Gilbert Burns, who opens as a plus 310 underdog, which is pretty wild. And those are sort of the opening odds for those fights. And then we found out Sean Brady stepping in against Leon Edwards, and Sean Brady gets his wish. This is the fight he wanted. He wanted to be the guy getting that call, and it's a roundabout way of getting there, Damon. But Sean Brady is getting his chance. He's going to O2 Arena. He's gonna be hated, but this is the kind of thing Sean Brady likes, and huge opportunity for him. So opportunity is the word of the day for a lot of these athletes, and boy, are they going to get him. And there's so much news to digest, and I still can't get Ilia Topuria versus Arman Tsarukyan out of my mind. So at this point, let's go to the peeps. Let's see what they're saying about all this, because I'm sure they have had lots of reaction to this news as well. And Casey has no sleeves on, so he's excited.
I had sleeves on, but then the news came out and it was boom, it just flew off. It was amazing. I wish you
Same shirt.
Same shirt, yeah.
He nearly went full Hulk Hogan and just ripped the whole shirt off, but he only got the sleeves. So yeah.
But he did it so slowly and gingerly. He didn't want to make sure the rips were perfect, right on the crease lines. I respect it.
All right, let's see what people are saying. Got some super chats.
RS40, Movzar, Allen, Lopez, Zalal, again, Yair, Murphy. So many matchups that we will lose. How would Ilia match up against Poirier, Arman, or Charles? What do you think? So Ilia versus Poirier, certainly an option. I don't think that's the UFC's first choice. I don't think that's going to be Dustin Poirier's first choice for his retirement fight. Ilia, Arman rocks, and then Ilia Topuria versus Charles Oliveira, Damon? That's not a bad shout either. Although it'd be kind of a tough one for freaking Charles Oliveira, right? How many number one contender fights does this guy have to friggin' win before he gets another title fight?
Yeah, I mean, listen, Ilia versus Arman or Ilia versus Charles, sign me up right now. I'm in. Take all my money. I want either one of those. I don't think it's going to be Poirier, because I think he said he wants kind of like a legend fight. I mean, do we just want to go ahead and sign him against Max Holloway for a third time? Because it just seems like that's where we're going in New Orleans, for his retirement fight. So, I mean, I think it'd be a fun fight. Don't get me wrong, but I just don't think that's going to be the fight. But Armin or Charles, dude, take my money right now. I will watch either one of those, and it would be tremendous.
Love him.
Did y'all see what Mr. Helwani, former colleague, tweeted just a few minutes ago?
About the Makhachev fight?
Yeah, the Makhachev fight. About will we be disappointed now? Because I know I'm actually excited for Topuria fighting in number one contender. I think that's awesome. But Helwani's kind of crushing that for me. But are we kind of, I don't know, are we gonna be disappointed if he gets a title fight, or do we? I personally would love him to fight. Armin's seems like the perfect fight. But sucks for Armin, but maybe it's good for Armin. Who knows? But were we kind of disappointed, or is just as long as Topuria vacated, we're kind of happy if anything.
Here's what I'll say. And this is no insider information. Damon said it best. The fact that Dana White did not just flat out announce this fight tells me something that no one's 100% sure yet. And as much as I respect Ariel Helwani, I'm still going to play the golden rule card at this point. Until it is on our website, I don't buy it. And that means we've confirmed with everybody involved. It has been announced, all of that, because information like this, I'm not saying he's not getting some side of the conversation saying that this is what is being planned or whatnot, but Islam Makhachev is managed by Ali Abdulaziz. That's all I'll say. And I have a hard time believing that we're getting that side locked down here. You know what I'm saying? But I don't know if he's completely wrong. It's a little sensitive right now. And Dana not announcing the fight to me speaks volumes to some extent. I mean, we may still end up getting it. And if it happens, it's still a fascinating fight, but man, if we can, it would just be so wild to see Ilia vacate a belt and then fight a Charles Oliveira or an Arman Sarukian before challenging for the lightweight belt. That is gangster shit right there. You don't see that ever. And Ilia could be that guy. So
has it happened? Has a champion vacated, gone up in weight class or down in weight class and not fight for the title next? Am I forgetting an obvious one? John vacated 205, but he immediately got a title shot when he went to heavyweight. Am I missing?
I can't think of anyone. I can't think of anyone vacating totally. I mean, I know BJ Penn went up, but he was still lightweight champ at the time, and he fought George.
Yeah, he vacated though. Yeah.
But did he vacate when he went up and fought Hughes? I can't remember. I can't remember if he vacated. Well, he wasn't champion at that point, so never mind. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think so. This might be the first time. Yeah. And to Mike's point, I'm not gonna hate it if he gets Islam. I'm not gonna hate that fight if that ends up happening. I don't like to play conspiracy theory here. We are living in a conspiracy theory world, but the fact that, listen, I know they had to announce that he's vacating because they're announcing Volkanovski versus Lopez, but you got to know the UFC, if they're announcing he's vacating, they would like to announce what Ilia is doing, right? You got to imagine they want to announce that because he's just vacating the belt and we don't know what he's doing. The fact that they didn't, it gives me pause. I don't want to just jump on and say it's definitely Islam Makhachev, because if it was done, I think they would have announced it.
And you got to think about it's not like Islam cares what the world thinks, but he is a competitive guy, and there's probably a part of him that kind of hears the critics of his reign saying okay, you've beat featherweights the entire time, and the only non-featherweight you beat in this run is Renato Moicano, who took the fight on a day's notice, and Dustin Poirier, who, timing is everything for Dustin Poirier. He wasn't the number one contender. He just was in the right place at the right time and came off a big win. And yeah, there hasn't been a time that Islam has defended the belt against the number one contender in a division. And to my point earlier, Charles Oliveira has won 17 number one contender fights. You know what I mean? He just won one against friggin' Michael Chandler in November. Dana said the winner of this fight is fighting for the lightweight title. And Charles has won two of them. He beat Beneil Dariush, and then he beat Michael Chandler. So maybe he gets the shot. I don't know, but maybe Islam does put his foot down and just say hey man, I want to fight the number one contender. I know I already beat Charles, but he's done enough to earn his opportunity. He did lose to Armin, but maybe he gets the shot. I don't know, but maybe Islam does put his foot down and just say hey man, I want to fight the number one contender. I know I already beat Charles, but he's done enough to earn his opportunity. He but then he got another number one contender fight. So this is just so this is crazy.
And if I'm Islam, like in that case, like even though Arman got injured and it kind of messed up what happened back in January, if I'm Islam, I'm like, just give me Arman again. Like, go ahead and give me that fight.
Yeah.
Like, no one's really gonna complain about Arman getting back in there. Dana was really the only one saying, "Oh no, he's got to get back in line." No one really would care. So I mean, if I'm Islam, I'm like, give me Arman. Like, he's actually the number one contender and he's earned it. Like, let's do that fight, the fight that everyone says is the toughest fight for me in the division. Because I think Ilia Topuria is incredible. He's an amazing fighter. But again, I don't know that I love him at light. We'll see. Maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe he'll bulk up and he'll look bigger and he'll be great. But I always go back to that Jai Herbert fight. And that was a rough night at the office for Ilia before he ended up winning that fight. That's why I'm like, maybe one warm-up fight. I'm not saying Charles Oliveira, Arman Saruki should be a warm-up fight, but I'm saying like maybe. I mean, it's like jumping in the deep end with like tiger sharks, and then you have to go against the great white in Islam Makhachev. Like neither one's fun, but maybe you get a little warm-up before you get to Islam.
Yeah, I mean, the whole featherweight thing is kind of just fun to talk about, but these guys are quality lightweights. Just because like Moicano, former featherweight. Oliveira, former featherweight. Poirier, former featherweight. They bulked up. They're lightweights. But man,
yeah,
so many. Woo! What a crazy, just crazy. All right. Anything else on this question?
Nah, I think we're good.
All right, cool.
Not getting the Moves, not getting Ilia versus Movsar like hurts my heart, but I might be the only heart hurt by that in this conversation, but. I always felt like Movsar stylistically had the best chance at 145 of beating Ilia Topuria. But
and just to throw it out there again, just so if people didn't hear at the beginning, Movsar's got Ramadan in March. He wasn't fighting in April. So It isn't that Movsar's getting screwed or they're like, we don't want Movsar in there. Movsar wouldn't fight that quickly after Ramadan. So he was already not in this conversation, unfortunately. I think he'll probably be, June, July probably is when we'll see Movsar back. And unfortunately, it's just really bad timing with all this going on.
And I'm sure Yusuf Salah will love hearing his name in such a positive light with this question after
exactly.
So there you go. Thank you, RS40.
Right. Thank you, RS40. All right. Super chat from KO3K.
Thank you. I wonder how Hunter/Maynard pulled this off. Topuria vacating his belt and pay-per-view points is wild. Hopefully his manager earned his paycheck.
Yeah, does
we're never gonna know the answer to this question. So
I wonder if Topuria, because I think because a couple people commented like, "Oh, Topuria's a clown. I can't believe he vacated." Assuming he's gonna lose money, but I would assume he vacated in the sense that he made a deal with the UFC, like I'm getting championship, not challenger money when he fights for a title, or if he's fighting for a title, who knows? Like, is this crazy to vacate? Because that's a big money. He's leaving a lot of money on the table, right?
I mean, potentially, yeah. I mean,
yeah.
Listen, the way pay-per-view points, typically you're only getting pay-per-view points if you're a champion and you're in a championship fight. There are rare exceptions, Brock Lesnar back in the day, guys like that, but
Connor,
it's not. Yeah. They're not just handing them out. And while Ilia has huge star potential, he's not a huge star yet. Like he hasn't. Like the Max Holloway fight was great, but I didn't hear anyone coming out of that saying, man, that sold 800,000 pay-per-views. I know we don't really get a lot of numbers now as it's on ESPN, but when they do those kind of numbers, Dana goes wild, or ESPN will go wild talking about the numbers. They didn't do that. So while I think Ilia has star potential, he's not a superstar yet. He's a star. He's not a superstar. He's not Connor. He's not John Jones. He's not those guys quite yet. So I don't know that he's in a position where he could demand pay-per-view points. I think he's serious about pursuing lightweight. And I think, and again, to Mike's credit, and Mike, you're absolutely right. Give you 100% kudos for this. I think he's just saying, hey, I want to be a lightweight. I'll do whatever it takes. And if that means vacating my belt and taking on Arman Saruki or taking on Charles Oliveira, I'll do it. I love that.
What a legend. And I will say this. I'm sure Ilia Topuria makes plenty of money outside of the UFC. He's not a global superstar, but in his home in Spain, that dude is a superstar. And he's probably making millions outside of fighting right now, just with sponsorship deals and all sorts of things. Like, he's doing just fine. So,
yeah. Thank you, KO3K. A couple more super chats.
Jay Fish, April and May are set. What is the main event for International Fight Week? I mean, I see. Look, through all this, I actually do think that we will get Islam versus Ilia. I think they will get everybody on board because it ain't gonna be John Jones versus Tom Aspinall. That I can tell you. Even though Dana is holding on to that dream so tight, yelling at some people, being like, "Relax, it's gonna happen. Announcement coming soon." I don't believe it. So I think ultimately, like, whatever Islam is going to need for him to say yes to this, he will. But I don't know. I'm not saying it today. I don't think this fight's signed, sealed, and delivered right now, but I do think this is what ends up happening, and it's going to take some time, but I do think this is what's actually going to happen.
I think Ilia and Islam is still, even though I'm saying like I'm not 100% confident, it's still the one that makes the most sense because it's the easiest one to put together based on timing. Islam fought in January. Ilia's healthy and moving to 155. Makes a lot of sense. But again, I still put caution on that because I really do think Islam is serious about saying, hey, I don't want to just keep fighting featherweights. Now, I know Islam has never been the guy to say I'm all about money, but, listen, UFC tax on a couple extra zeros. It's hard to turn that down life-changing money or huge life-changing money for your family. So maybe it happens. But I'll throw in a wrinkle here. I think the other one is possible based on timing. And now we know, getting into the country may not be nearly as much of a deterrent. How about Dricus Du Plessis versus Hamzat Chimaev headlining? I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm saying it could happen.
Would love that. I'll give my bronze medalist, John Jones versus Alex Pereira if he beats Magomed Ankalaev. Because I think John would fight Alex. I think he will rush. I think he will sprint to that opportunity. Not sure if he does that for Tom. Not because he's scared. I'm not saying that. He just knows he'll beat Alex, and it's prize fighting. That is the prize fightiest fight that John can get right now. So,
all right, one more super chat.
So, yo, Mike, Mitch Raposo is back. How stoked are you? Very stoked. Suma Derji should be a nice little fun scrap at 125. So, and hopefully Suma Derji makes weight. Because Mitch Raposo just seems to fight dudes who miss weight every time he fights them. And Mitch took that fight on like a week's notice and still made weight, and his opponent didn't. So we'll see. Mitch gets a full camp. Hopefully a fighter that makes weight. Should be fun.
All right, gentlemen. I think we're good.
After all the talk tonight, Mitch Raposo is like the happiest guy in the world. He got mentioned at the end of the show, man. Come on, Mitch Raposo. Way to go, buddy.
That's what we finish the show off. Mitch Raposo talk,
I mean, no Parker Porter question, which always disappoints me, but listen. I'm sure Parker Porter, being the man that he is probably extremely excited that his fellow New Englander Mitch Raposo getting a shout. So there you go. Tomorrow, BTL, 12:30 p.m. Eastern time. For those of you in the chat, and I'm sure there's some of you, I'm not looking at it right now, like, oh man, only the super chatters got questions. I didn't get a question asked. We'll talk. It's gonna be a whole show of your questions tomorrow, right? We have plenty of shit to talk about. Jed will join me. You know the takes will be spicy. He gets to react to all of this.
Yes, I can't wait.
But Ilia Topuria did vacate the lightweight title, so I kind of feel like Jed is going to put him over in a big way after the amount of DMs I got for Jed's screaming rant last week is just unbelievable. So something to look forward to tomorrow about 12 hours from right now. So thank you for joining us. A lot of news to digest. Hopefully we were able to do this off the seat of our pants. For Casey, for Damon, I am Mike Heck. Appreciate you. We'll see you tomorrow. Get some sleep.